Hello, New York Giants fans. Welcome back to the Everything New York Giants podcast with New York Giants Fangirl. I'm your host, Adriana. Today, we are going to preview training camp, which I cannot believe it starts next week. It's going to be here before we know it. So I want to go through the position groups and talk about the groups that I'm most excited about, how I think they're going to fare, and the most important things to watch for those of us who are there. And if you're keeping track at home, keep your eyes peeled for these things. So I first want to start by saying thank you to all the new listeners and subscribers. I just want to give you a little bit of background because these are the most common questions that I get asked. So I am a Giants fan because of my grandfather. He was a Giants season ticket holder for many years. So my whole family is Giants fans. That's how I grew up being a Giants fan. I'm from North Jersey originally. I spent, the first 18 years of my life there before I went to the University of South Carolina. I live in Connecticut now. And I will be at all of the training camps during the week, and then I will be at probably all of the home games this year, so very excited. I started this page a couple years ago when I had moved to Connecticut. I was looking for other Giants fans in the area, especially because it was during COVID when we couldn't go to games, and I'm at home screaming at my TV wondering if everyone else is as pissed off about Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge as I was. So I basically just started the page as that, looking for other Giants fans, and then the more that I talked about the Giants and updated people on injuries and things like that, kind of became this whole page where now I love it because I feel like it's become a good resource for a lot of people, especially those of you who live outside of the tri-state and can't get all of your Giants news in one source. So that is my goal, to be your number one source for everything New York Giants. So when you come to my page or you come to my podcast, you can find everything that you possibly want to know about the team. So that's the history. I started the podcast a couple years ago, and my goal is to really continue to expand the podcast and hope to get some more guests on and things like that. So that's where we're at now. Continue to growing. So thank you for subscribing. Share with your other Giants friends if they are interested. So now let's talk about training camp. Obviously, I know that the offensive line is going to be the most important thing on everyone's radar. And the one thing that I want to talk about when it comes to the offensive line is this time last year, there were so many concerns and there were a lot of rotations during camp, during preseason, and even the first 10 weeks of the regular season. So I think when a lot of people think back on last year, we talk about the injuries and everything went wrong. A big reason why offensive lines succeed is because of the continuity, and you'll hear a lot of former offensive linemen and current offensive linemen talk about this. I mean, even Justin Pugh has talked about it too, is that continuity is so important. And for the Giants, when, all throughout camp, everyone's getting rotations and some are in with the ones and some are in with the twos, I think it's really hard to find that. So this year, I expect to see continuity from this offensive line from day one. So what I expect the offensive line to look like is this from left to right. Andrew Thomas, I think it's going to be Jermaine Illuminor at left guard, and then John Michael Schmitz at center. At right guard, I believe is going to be John Runyon, and then at right tackle is Evan Neal. So the plan right now is that Evan Neal is going to be ready to go for camp. So we will see, but that's what I expect to see at camp. I don't expect to see Marcus McKeithen getting reps in the ones and Joshua Zudu getting reps with the ones. That's the stuff that I do not want to see. I understand that it is important for their growth. However, when this offensive line has been the cause as to why this team has been so historically bad the last decade or so, it needs to start from day one that there is continuity. So that's what I expect. I really, really am hoping, and I hope that Carmen Brasillo, the offensive line coach, is going to be a stickler for this, is that we are sticking with the same line day in and day out. Now, the only exception I think to that is going to be maybe not until preseason. If Evan Neal is looking really, really bad, then I could see them putting Illuminor to right guard, and then honestly, I don't know what they're going to do with Evan Neal, but my expectation, again, is that these 5 offensive linemen play together practice after practice, preseason game after preseason game into the regular season, so they can have a history and practice together, and so they actually know what the hell they're doing in week 1. So if there's anything Other than that, you will hear from me, because I'm telling you right now, I will be absolutely furious, as I think we all should be, because when we've seen what has happened over the last couple of years, there's just no excuse. The only excuse and the only change that I want to see is, again, in regards to Evan Neal. So the last thing about the offensive line is that Evan Neal has to take a giant, see what I did there? Step forward this year. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we'll see if that happens, but obviously he's going to be a guy that I am laser focused on during camp. So outside of the offensive line, there are a couple other position groups that I think are going to be exciting and interesting to watch. If you hear the snoring, it is my English Bulldog. I'm trying to talk louder than her snoring. So I apologize, because we only got her about a month ago. She is a stage 5 clinger. She's still getting used to everything, and she follows me everywhere. So next up, let's talk about cornerback, because this is going to be a position group that is going to be, again, focused on very closely during camp, and there are a lot of question marks surrounding it right now. So obviously we know Tay Banks is outside corner number 1. We know that he's sealed the deal, good to go. The question is going to be at the other cornerback spot, so the opposite of Tay Banks, and then of course the slot corner. So let's talk about who's going to play opposite Tay Banks. We don't know, but here's who's going to be in the rotation. We have Cordell Flott, Trey Hawkins III, Trey Herndon. I heard that Darnay Holmes was getting some outside snaps, so it's possible that he will be in that rotation as well. Alex Johnson, who's a rookie, I believe he was an undrafted free agent, and there are some good bits and pieces coming out about him. David Long, who will probably be in the rotation. Aaron Robinson, I don't expect him to see with the ones in any way, shape, or form, but he's going to be out there. And if he magically does anything well, I will keep you guys posted, but do not hold your breath. So out of those guys, I think as of right now, and from what I'm hearing, it's Cordell Flott's job to lose. I know that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in a lot of people, but this is why we have to keep our eyes peeled on camp, right? So is Trey Herndon going to be able to be in the mix? You know, Cordell Flott has not been excellent at that position by any means. He's better there than he is in the slot, but he has gotten toasted quite a bit. So can Trey Herndon beat him out? Will they, in the next week, sign a new veteran corner who's going to come in and start opposite Tay Banks, you know, immediately? Something else to keep an eye on. So we'll see about that. I think that ultimately it's going to come down to Herndon and Flott. I think there's a possibility that Trey Hawkins could be in the mix, but I just don't feel wildly confident about him after, you know, he had a great camp last year, and then, you know, the regular season is a lot harder than training camp. So it'll be interesting to see how he does if he gets snaps with the ones against the Lions players, because him going against Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be interesting, to say the least. So I'll keep my eyes peeled very closely on that once that comes up. So now let's talk about the slot. So the slot is either going to be Darnay Holmes, Nick McLeod, or Drew Phillips, who is the rookie. Nick McLeod did a pretty nice job there last year. I think ultimately it's going to be between him and Drew Phillips. I know that they really like Darnay Holmes, but I think that they drafted Phillips. He loves playing the slot. They drafted him to either beat out McLeod or to be the number 2 guy and the starter of the future if McLeod is not here for much longer. So I think ultimately it comes down to those two, and those are the two that I would definitely keep your eyes peeled for when it comes to the slot corner. So now let's go to defensive line. Obviously Dexter Lawrence, there's no question marks about that. I do think that Nacho is ultimately going to be the starter opposite him, but when it comes to some of the other defensive linemen who are going to be in the mix, these are the other guys on the roster: Ryder Anderson, Elijah Chapman, DJ Davidson, Timmy Horn, Jordan Phillips, Jordan Riley, Casey Rogers. I think out of all of those guys, Jordan Phillips and Jordan Riley are going to have the best opportunity outside of Nacho and obviously Dexter. So those are the guys that I'm expecting to see a big step forward this year. Another guy that I would throw in the mix too is DJ Davidson. He has dealt with some injury issues, but he is a Joe Shane draft pick. So I would say keep your eyes peeled on him as well. There is a possibility that he could really get into that heavy rotation there. Let's move along to running back, because this is a very hot topic. The amount of people who ask me who our running back is, I'm like, guys, I know his name is not Saquon, but like, why does everyone forget that Devin Singletary is a Giant? Ultimately, in my opinion, he is running back 1. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about that. But when it comes to running back 2, I think that's going to be where the most competition is. Because we know they drafted Tyrone Tracy and they love him. He's got very good hands because he's a former wide receiver. They also drafted Eric Gray the year before that. So we didn't get to see a lot of Eric Gray because of Matt Breida. So does Eric Gray get most of the snaps this year, considering he's in his second season with the team and second season in this scheme? He's going to know a little bit more than Tyrone Tracy is, or is Tyrone Tracy going to be able to break out as a rookie and win that position? Someone else that we also have to keep in mind here, 2 other players I would say, is Dante Miller, who I think he ran a 4.27 40. He's extremely fast. And the Giants picked him up this offseason as an undrafted free agent coming straight from college. And then Jacob Sailors, who's a UFL player who is excellent on special teams. So Sailors and Miller both have special teams experience. So I think keep that in mind. I just am not so sure if they are going to have the opportunity to break out between Eric Gray and Tyrone Tracy. There is some good talent there. But I think it's going to be a very interesting position to watch. Ja'Shawn Corbin is on the roster. In my opinion, I think out of those guys, he doesn't really have a shot. Could be totally wrong on that. I don't really see it. Let's move along to safety, because obviously with McKinney gone, there have been some concerns around this position as well. So we have Dane Belton, Tyler Nubin, Gervarius Owens, Jason Pinnock, Isaiah Simmons, and there are a couple others here. So we have Caleb Hayes, Jalen Mills, and Elijah Riley. So Dane Belton, I think, out of all of those guys, has done quite well over the last couple years. I think he's a really good opportunity to be in the mix. I think that ultimately Jason Pinnock is getting the starting job, and then I think that there is a big possibility that Tyler Nubin could be involved with the starting job as well. The Giants loved him. They drafted him this year. He is a rookie, but Dane Belton got some playing time as a rookie, another Joe Shane draft pick. So I think ultimately the safety rotation will be between those 3, and then, depending on how Bowen's defense how he wants to utilize his defense, I think that we're going to see Isaiah Simmons in all sorts of roles. I think partially it will be safety, partially it will be inside linebacker, partially it will be rushing the passer. I think we're going to kind of see him all over the place. So I'm not so sure that like week 1, snap 1, he's going to have that starting rotation, but I do think we're going to see a lot of him this year, which I, for one, am very excited about. I felt like he wasn't really utilized correctly with Wink. So curious about that. Let's talk about the tight ends, because I don't know why there has been some confusion out there and some idea that Daniel Bellinger is going to get cut, and I have no idea where this is coming from, but I can tell you that there's probably a 99% chance that is wrong. The Giants organization loves Daniel Bellinger. He's a Joe Shane, Brian Dable draft pick. He dealt with a little bit of injuries here and there, but there is no doubt that this organization loves him. He's going nowhere. He's going to be tight end 1. Theo Johnson, I believe, is going to be tight end 2, and I still am of the belief that I just am not so sure that Lawrence Cager is going to be tight end number 3. He looks like he put on some weight this offseason. He's actually jacked, which I was surprised by, because I remember him being pretty lean last year. But in my opinion, he was just okay last year. To be honest, I can't really forgive him for dropping the 2-point conversion that would have won one of the games. Honestly, I don't remember which one it was at this point. It might have honestly been 2 years ago, not even last year. But I'm just like, bring in some new blood. Like, I'm over Lawrence Cager. They did re-sign him, so obviously they see something in him. They like him. From what I've heard from OTAs, he got a good amount of snaps during that. But I just think that Jack Stoll or Chris Manhertz are going to have the opportunity during camp to take more snaps from him. And, Cager's not really a great blocking tight end. He is better as a receiver, but still drops 2-point conversion. So, I don't know. I just am not sold on him, and I just feel like someone like Manhertz or Stoll is a little more well-rounded, and they are both way better blockers than I think Cager has the opportunity to be. So I still feel that way. Let me know what you guys think. I know there are a lot of people who I think believe that there is a big possibility that Cager will make the roster, and you're probably not wrong. Like, it definitely could go either way. I just don't feel very strongly about it. And again, maybe I'm holding a grudge, but I'm just like, there's better talent. Like, give me someone else. So I think the last position group that I want to focus on is the wide receivers, because there are so many wide receivers on this roster. And I think ultimately, depending on how many they keep, I think they'll probably keep 7, knowing that this team has a very large injury history. And especially with the new special teams rules and things like that, like I just think that they're going to end up keeping 7 this year. So that being said, these are all the wide receivers on the roster. Ayer Asante, Miles Boykin, Chase Cotta, Brace Ford Wheaton, Isaiah Hodgins, Dennis Houston, Jalen Hyatt, John Giles, Isaiah McKenzie, Malik Neighbors, Gunnar Olszewski, Allen Robinson, Wandale Robinson, and Darius Slayton. So out of all of those, this is going to be my prediction on who makes the final cut for the 53. Obviously, I think these 4, there's no question. We know it's going to be Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton, Wandale Robinson, and Jalen Hyatt. No questions about those guys. The other 3 is where I think the competition is wide open, but I think that these 3 guys have the edge. That's why I think that they'll make the team. One of them being Brace Ford Wheaton. He's very fast and he was looking really great last year before that injury, and I have heard really good things from people who have been close to him and close to the organization. So I think there is a very large possibility that he could make this roster. Outside of him, Isaiah Hodgins. Front office also loves him. He's done a good job when he's been in games. He's made some key plays and scored some touchdowns no matter who the quarterback was last year. So I think that since he's come in, he's done a really nice job, and I think that he absolutely has the possibility to thrive this year. So I think that he's going to make the roster. And then last up, I think it's going to be Allen Robinson. I think that, as a veteran in the league, he has a lot of experience. He's had some really great years in the league. And I just think that if he's still got the speed, I think that he's still got it. So I think there's a great chance for him to make the roster. The only one that I want to throw in here is Gunnar, because I just think that there is probably no way that they don't keep him, but maybe they allocate his roster spot to the special teams section versus strictly the wide receivers, because I just can't imagine them not keeping him. Even with the way that the special teams rules has changed, he's done an excellent job for this team. They re-signed him for a reason. So I think that he's also going to make the roster as well. And again, maybe it's just going to be in that special teams category. So, lastly, we can talk about the quarterback, which obviously is going to be important. I think that in training camp, it's hard to really get an idea of what everyone's going to look like. From the videos that I've seen of Jones, he looks like he's progressing well. His footwork has been great. Speed is looking good. So, he's supposed to be ready to go in training camp. From everything that I've heard up until this point, it looks like that's going to be the case. So I'm excited to see how he looks. I think ultimately we will see the most from Daniel Jones on those last couple days of camp when the Lions are in town. Obviously, they're not hitting each other, but when you're going against the same defense every day, and I understand that it's a new defense and Bowen is going to throw some different looks and things at him, it's just different when you're going against a different team. So I think that those last 2 days when he's in the mix with the Lions, I think we'll have a little bit better of an idea of, how he's improved this offseason, obviously outside of the knee thing and the injury. I think we're going to get a better idea of how he's, progressing and how he looks and feels on the field. We can talk about the quarterback 2 competition. In my opinion, I just don't really think there is a competition. I think that it's Drew Lock, that he is quarterback number 2, and DeVito is going to be quarterback number 3. I don't really think that Nathan Rourke is going to be competing with Tommy DeVito. Anything is possible, but I think the fact that, DeVito did a relatively decent job last year considering the nothingness that he had to work with, and won a couple games and knows this offense and the front office knows him and all that sort of stuff. I just feel like he has a leg up over Rourke. And I think they really just brought in Rourke in case the worst case scenario, all 3 quarterbacks go down. So let's all hope that's not the case. I cannot deal with another season where we are on our 3rd or 4th string quarterback and everyone is injured. So let's just knock on wood, say a little prayer, whatever you need to do. I don't know, turn your pajamas inside out and do a rain dance, but we need this team to be healthy. So I ultimately think that if this team is healthy, they will win at least 9 games. There just is no excuse and there's no reason why they shouldn't win 9 games if everyone's healthy. So I think they are fully capable of doing that. This is a better team on paper than it was last year. So I think they can do it. So that's what I'm going to be most focused on during camp. I will be back next week. So what I'm going to do is I am going to recap Hard Knocks and then talk about the first couple days of training camp. So make sure you follow me on Instagram at New York Giants Fangirl, because from camp I will be posting stories. I'll do live videos, so you'll be able to see everything in action during those days before I go ahead and do a recap here. So again, it's at New York Giants Fangirl on Instagram, on TikTok. Instagram is the platform that I am most active on, so make sure to stay tuned there. Please subscribe, like the video, share with your other Giants fans, and stay tuned because there is a lot more Giants content coming your way. Thanks for listening.